Chase Thomas the Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, down there in Tequila, Georgia. My good friend from the University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm doing great. You know, per usual, just watching the Georgia Bulldogs win a college basketball game. You know, now 12-3 on the season. Hashtag Everything School HQ.
I'm going to go ahead and pull up where their Ken Palm is at the moment because they haven't played
the
anybody.
Bracketology, not Joe Lenardi, but Andy Katz. Bracketologies came out. He had Georgia first four out. So, you know,
here's the thing.
That's a win right there. They're moving in the right direction.
Here's the thing. They are 71st in Ken Palm at 12-3. Their strength of schedule is, let's pull this up, 134th in the country. They are...
Hey, it's baby steps, man. This team's been in like 14th place in the SEC, 13th a couple years here recently. Well,
Tennessee will be there on Saturday, so you'll get the necessary...
There you go. Big time atmosphere in Stegman Coliseum on Saturday.
You going?
We were thinking about it. I don't know. We'll see.
You should do it. It's holiday weekend, 3-day weekend.
Oh, it should be. It's not a 3-day weekend for me.
Oh, do you not get Monday off?
No.
We get Monday
Company
off.
doesn't care about MLK. What are you going to do? It's a damn shame.
Wow. Well, Matt Green, this is a crazy time because we're like 7 hours removed from Nick Saban just casually, a casual tweet from Chris Lowe of ESPN. He's retired. And then I love the second sentence of like, he is a 6-time national champion at the University of Alabama. It's just kind of funny. It's like, yeah, we're familiar with the great Nick Saban. But and just like that, it's over. Nick Saban out the door. I wondered before the season on this very show and had that.
You didn't wonder, sir.
Yeah.
You called it. You also called 8-4, and you were way off on your 8-4.
Not 8-4. They were very close to 8-4. We've said this multiple times.
They
I'm not relitigating this.
And made the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Your 8-4 was way off, but the other half of your prediction was that Nick Saban retires, and I got to give you some credit with that. Like, you could get that right. You could be guessing that for the last few years, every year, and eventually you're going to get it right. But this is the first time you've made that prediction, so that was I'll give you credit there. But the 8-4, no, I gotta hold you to your 8-4. That was I was with you that I thought it was gonna be a bad year, but I wasn't ready to go 8-4.
I don't know. I still think they were closer to 8-4.
They were definitely we were definitely wrong on the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they found a way to get to the playoff. But yeah, man, it's the end of an era. Like Nick Saban, it's like I try to tell Tori all the time that like they weren't always this. Like this is legit. Saban he's the greatest coach of all time. Like the most of my childhood, Alabama was obviously a big brand, but they were never like the best team in the country. I think they won in '92. I don't remember that, but they were just they made some terrible coaching hires there in the early 2000s, but they threw a bunch of money at Nick Saban, and it definitely paid off. This is why people throw a bunch of money at dudes, because sometimes it pans out like Nick Saban. I got a couple stats for you right here. So he's 297, 71 and 1 in his career. At Alabama, 206 and 29, an 87.7 winning percentage. Average season at Alabama was 12.1 and 1.7 losses on a season. Like they're basically averaging playing 14 games a year. Like that's just that alone, it's up there. Like you look at what Bear Bryant did at his time in Alabama, and he's like God status, you know, like the fact that anyone could ever be better at Alabama than Bear Bryant is just pretty insane. And you look at Bear Bryant's 22, 32, 46 and 9. Like even Saban had a higher winning percentage than Bear Bryant. Like it's pretty absurd. And it just, man, it's about to shake. Like this coaching carousel is just about to go crazy, because one of the big time coaches in college football is going to be getting this job, and it's going to start a domino effect all over college football.
I don't know. It seems like Josh Pate of Late Kick was saying the search is already rounding third base on tonight's show, and you look at where this search might be going, and I was thinking about like, okay, in terms of possibilities, and I've said on this show and to people over the years of like Dion always made the most sense to me. It's like they're close, they did the commercials together. He was always just like he would be one because I think part of this job because you're following the greatest college football coach of all time, you have to have an ego. You have to have this ability not to crumble when you're because the problem with taking this job now is you're going to be worse at this than Nick Saban. There's no way around it. Like you're going to be worse. You're going to win less titles. You're going to have a worse tenure at the University of Alabama. That's just how it is. Like fans are not going to be happy with you for the majority of your time there. And you could win some. It just doesn't matter because you're following the greatest college football coach of all time. And the level of winning,
guarantee that the next guy's not going to win a championship.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying like you're going into every year expecting like you're fielding potentially the best roster in the sport. You're probably not going to recruit just as well as Nick Saban did over the years. And part of that is just NIL and the transfer portal and everything else. It's just really hard to have a dominant dynasty now. Like Nick Saban is this Alabama dynasty is probably it for those kind of dynasties in college football, just with the 12-team playoff, with the portal, with us going to a model where so many of these Big Ten and SEC schools have, like, I was looking at, I think it wasn't Bud Elliott, but somebody else was putting up the recruiting numbers for this most recent class and how many of the blue chippers wound up at either the Big Ten or the SEC, and almost all the 5 stars and a cornucopia of the 4 stars wound up at those 2 conferences. And then the couple of just kind of not misnomers, the outliers is like Florida State, Miami, and one other school that I'm blanking on right now. But it's like, by and large, you just don't have the juice in any other conference to make a real run. And the thing is, these other schools that Bama used to dominate, especially in recruiting, guess what? Oregon or Ole Miss, they're killing in the portal. A&M, they're way up than what they used to be. Texas, obviously back. You look across the board. I mean, it's just Michigan is getting a lot of guys in the South. They're recruiting well. Ohio State's in your backyard all the time getting great players. It's just really, really hard to...
You didn't even mention Georgia.
Well, Georgia's already implied. Like, Georgia's right there. Like, I don't need to say, hey, folks, you hear about this? Do you see this? Georgia might be throwing...
Well, because I think that's kind of what started, not to say the downfall of Alabama, but them no longer being just this absolute head and shoulders juggernaut, was Georgia actually like balancing out the talent a little bit.
Yeah.
And that Alabama not just getting everyone they want.
No, but I mean, it's just, he's the greatest coach of all time. I don't know. I mean, you can make the case that did they have the most dominant team ever in 2020 that we've seen in college football, where you win every game by 70 plus points, and it was an all SEC schedule, and they just were never tested, and they had so many NFL players from that team and everything else. But like, Saban checked every box at Alabama.
12 individual awards. It was like they swept like the offensive, like best receiver, best running back, best offensive lineman, best quarterback. It was insane.
They lost their wide receiver, their Heisman favorite, and Jalen Waddle in the middle of the year, and got better. And then Donovan Smith just ends up winning.
Donovan, or you said Donovan
Devontae Smith, excuse me.
Oh yeah, I was like, you're saying his name wrong, and now I'm blanking on what his name is. Right. Jalen Waddle was legit their best wide receiver, like the first half of that season, and then a different receiver wins the Heisman. Yeah, that team was stupid loaded, but yeah, I mean, in just the early years of the 3 championships in 4 years, like in 2009, 11, and 12, it's just like you're never going to see that level of dominance ever again. And you've seen like how many teams have, like you said, how many teams have gotten it right, or how many programs have gotten it right immediately after following the legend. Like you saw Steve Spurrier, you go Ron Zook afterward, like Phil Fulmer is even one that was like kind of forced out. So it's not like he retired. Did he retire? Was he fired, right?
I mean, it was a forced out. It wasn't a retirement.
Yeah. And so it's like they had Lane Kiffin for like a year or two. That would obviously or just 1 year, right? That's a whole other story. But yeah, it's like like a Lloyd Carr or somebody that's a long-term guy that retires, and you get Rich Rod, and Michigan football's never been the same until Harbaugh got there. But yeah, I mean, there's just Jim Tressel to Urban Meyer. I guess that's an upgrade right there. I don't know if he retired or if he was fired. Actually, he was probably fired, right? Tressel by the end of it, a little
Tressel was fired.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a different situation. But you have this all-time great coach, and he might not be. I don't even know who followed Woody Hayes. That's probably the better example. But yeah, it's gonna be tough for Alabama to, as tough as it's going to be. And I've seen all these tweets, like I think Stuart Mandel and people like that. Like you're insane if you're the guy that's gonna follow Nick Saban. Just stay where you are and just win your games and let your school be happy. Like that's because you're Stuart Mandel. No disrespect, Stuart Mandel. Like you don't play the game. You're not in it like these guys are. These are some big time dudes, and they know they're wired different than me and you, right? We're like, hey, Dan Lanning, just stay at Oregon. You got a good thing going, man. Don't go to Alabama. And he's like, no, I can win anywhere. I'm as good as coach as there is, because he's wired different than me and you. So someone big time is going to take that Alabama job. But yeah, it's obviously going to be hard to fill Saban's shoes.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it is Lanning, and he was an assistant there for, I think, only a year at Alabama, but obviously a great pedigree, a lot of success right away at Oregon, great DC at UGA. It would be kind of cool. Like, you've already got Kirby over there, so you have the Kirby versus Dan, the protege versus the guy now, and Kirby and Dan, and I think Dan will be successful wherever he goes. But I was also thinking about this. Their AD is his two hires at Alabama. One, Nate Oates from Buffalo, so not a local guy, and who he just hired for baseball, because there was a whole scandal with their baseball team, if you remember last year, and he gets fired middle of the year. And they go with, not the interim, who actually guided them and kept the Bama baseball team moving, and was a favorite to keep the job, and most thought that he would end up just getting the job full-time. They go Maryland. So I look at this and I like that's stuff I stash away, because the AD obviously is a big part of this, and like everyone's immediate gut reaction was Kiffin. Like that's what you see. Like it's been reported that he's always wanted this job, this and the other. I've said on this show, I think Kiffin's final move in college football is LSU. He just feels like that being it for him, and then him riding off into the sunset.
LSU?
I just think he knows he can win at LSU. I think he knows that it's not much of a shift from Ole Miss to LSU. I don't think
isn't Alabama, Ole Miss to Alabama like the exact.
It's different though, because you can win at LSU and you don't follow Saban. Like, and you can get a lot of the same kind of players. You can just, I don't know. My gut tells me LSU is his final play.
But that's the thing about following Saban. The cupboard is full. Like this might not be.
Hold on, we don't know that in the portal era. Like, we have no idea how many guys, because you have a 30-day window right now.
But the foundation of Alabama is a hell of a lot better than any other program you could possibly take over right now. Like, Alabama is just...
I think Georgia's actually in a better spot to take over, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that's probably true, but I'm just saying, in terms of the jobs that are going to be open, like out there, there's not going to be a better situation. Like this team is going to be ready to win now. Like, yeah. Obviously it's going to come with expectations to win now. And that's what's going to make the job tough, but there's a lot of benefits to that job. But so my biggest question is this: who can Alabama not get? That's a current college football coach. Cause I think that list is 2, maybe 3 people long. And I think it's Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, and maybe Steve Sarkisian. Like, just because he's at Texas and they're just a huge brand and he just started having success of his own and got to the playoff on his own, like, he doesn't necessarily need to upgrade to Alabama. You know what I mean? So outside of that, I don't see one coach in college football that if Alabama wanted him, they couldn't get him.
Oh, Kirby Smart. I don't think you get Kirby right now.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the list. Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, and maybe Steve Sarkisian. I think after that, every single
Sark.
I think every single coach after that is theirs if they want them.
That's a good question. Well, I mean, you gotta remember ties too. Like a lot of places people are coaching at their school. I don't know if Heupel would do it. Like, I don't know if Heupel would take Bama.
if Alabama came knocking, I think Josh Heupel's bouncing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not really sure who all. I mean, also, I don't know. Troy Calhoun at Air Force is signing up for that. I think he's got a good thing. I don't think he wants to run his offense at.
I think if Alabama
Tuscaloosa.
wants him, I think he can. Alabama can pay a couple more dollars than Air Force.
I just do you want that if you're Troy Calhoun? What a conversation we're having about the Alabama.
Yeah,
coaching
let's
job.
keep it moving.
So, and shout out to Troy Calhoun, great coach. Love Ben.
I'm sure he's doing a great job.
He is doing a great job. I have his helmet. They sent me a helmet. No, shout out to Air Force. No, I don't think it's gonna be Dion now that it's going through. But I think about this AD, and I don't think it's going to be Lanning either. Like, I think it's just too obvious now, and there's just been too much plain talk where he is. And Richard Johnson of SI just reported that he was told, or he had a source or something, that Lanning was in Eugene as of this afternoon. So I don't know, because like Oregon's a good job, and he's got a great class coming in right here. They're going to be right there in the CFP going into next year, and I think they're going to be. I mean, I think you can make the case they're the favorites to win the Big Ten next year.
Do you think he would turn down Alabama to stay at Oregon?
I don't know. The buyout's huge. His buyout's the biggest of all their targets. I think his contract got restructured or something where his buyout's like $20 million to get him out of Oregon. So I think he would be the most expensive pull for Alabama if I have that right. I think actually it's another team. I think I might turn. My gut's telling me, because this is the other part of it, is like you made a point about Alabama just being not too big to fail, but they have this great infrastructure, right? Like Nick Saban built this 20-year juggernaut. They have the most amount of blue chippers ever in this year.
It's at least better than almost everybody.
Right. He's built a great infrastructure. They have a great NIL collective, this, that, and the other. Great recruiting area. Bama's got a great legacy. Dudes in the league, this, that, and the other. However, Bama's made bad hires. Like, Shula was a bad hire. Price, obviously, bad hire. Like, this is a program that it's not like they're bulletproof. It's not like it's just been nothing but national titles and this, that, and the other. Like, this is, it's a risk. Like, they are now in a shaky spot because there are no guarantees he is going to make the right hire here. There is no guarantees that you're just going to be able to keep this train moving the same way that Saban did, and that this next hire, like the Alabama is what you've come to know and expect from Alabama over the last 20 years. Saban made it look a lot easier, I'm certain, than it actually is going to be for the next University of Alabama football coach to keep this thing humming, both recruiting on the field with the collective, the buy-in across the administration, all that. Keeping donors happy, keeping boosters happy, keeping players happy, getting the same amount of dudes in the league, this, that, and the other. I think it's just, it's going to be so much more complicated. And coaching searches can get weird. Politics can be in play. Like, Auburn found a way to, just like you're seeing right now, Ryan Williams is probably going to end up at Auburn. They're going to have multiple 5-stars in this class, just receivers alone. Hugh Freeze built just a juggernaut already with his staff. Auburn, it shouldn't be that hard for them to be good. And they still hired Brian Harsin, and like they still were just wandering the Alabama
They're rolling
desert.
Toomer's corner tonight. Did you see that?
But what I'm saying is, like, these schools make it a lot harder. We saw Florida. We know what you mentioned, Florida, and after Spurrier, after Urban Meyer, you think like, okay, well, Florida's back. They're in good shape. They'll figure it. They'll be fine. Like, Urban Meyer showed that Florida is good, and like this and the other, they'll be okay. No, like the next person who follows Dabo at Clemson, you're gonna be like, wow, Dabo, what? He was able to do something that he made it look a lot easier than it actually is to make this. Because you remember what Clemson was before Dabo. They were never the national title juggernaut that he developed them to be over almost a decade. I think when I think about Alabama, the people who are just penciling in that this is just going to be a seamless transition, they're going to get whoever they want, and they're just going to keep this thing humming, I'm not so certain of that. It's always a risk in these coaching searches. There's always a lot of moving parts. But I don't think it's going to be a Southern guy. I don't think it's going to be a Kiffin. I don't think it's going to be someone from the SEC. My gut tells me it's not Lanning. It's not going to be Dion. It's going to be a Big Ten coach, but I don't think it's the one that people think. I think it's going to be Kalen DeBoer at Washington. There's a reason Ryan Grubb, the OC at Washington, was like Saban's first target this offseason to be his next OC. my gut tells me they're going to go outside the box here. And Kalen DeBoer, you know how I feel about him on this program. Great coach, just wins wherever he goes. I mean, it's not Brian Harsin, but it could be one of those things where, like, look at Washington's recruiting numbers right now.
Brian Harsin,
look at what they're doing. He's not a great recruiter. He's winning with, Michael Penix, obviously he had his history at Indiana, but all those receivers, that defensive line, that offensive line, those were Jimmy Lake guys. Those were who was an ace recruiter at Washington. Peterson before him. I don't know what it looks like when he's not recruiting at close to the same level that Nick Saban was. I think it's going to be a weird hire, and I'm not sure. Like, I like Kalen DeBoer a lot. I would encourage Kalen DeBoer to stay at Washington, but I understand it's like generational money going to Alabama, and that's just an opportunity of a lifetime. But I don't know. That's my gut. I think it's going to be a weird hire like that.
How dare you even put Brian Harsin's name in the same conversation as Kalen DeBoer? It's just no.
Hold on. Brian Harsin was a great coach before he got to Auburn.
Great coach. He was doing fine at Boise State. Like,
Brian Harsin was a good coach.
He went to the Pac-12. He was like what, like 24 and like 3 or something in the.
He's 85 and 36 as a head coach, and that's with the Auburn stuff. He was 69 and 19 at Boise. He only lost 8 conference games in 7 years.
That's fine.
He didn't lose a conference game the last 2 years he was there.
It's not Washington. It's not doing the
I'm not disagreeing, but hold on. Let's just not make it seem like Brian Harsin can't coach college football. Like, the dude's good. He just picked a bad fit in Auburn. Like, it was just a bad culture fit. But no, the guy can still coach. He can coach ball.
No, that's fine. I just, regardless, like, obviously it's tough to make a hire, but the guy that's taking over this program, like, I don't think anyone thinks it's going to be seamless, because you're not going to be as good as Nick Saban. But this program that is being inherited is probably the best program any coach has inherited like over the last, I don't know, decades.
Yeah.
Like no one has just retired and left the program in this good a shape. So while it's going to be tough for the first guy, he's going to have a lot to work with right off the bat.
So I'll ask you this, Matt Green. Who would be your favorite hire, just as like, take off your Georgia fandom, like your favorite Bama that you're like, this would be the most interesting. I would like to see them do this the most. And then who would you be most fearful of them hiring as a Georgia fan? Like, who would be like, oh, this is a great hire and they're going to be awesome?
Ooh, that's a good question. So let me keep my Georgia hat on for like 1 second. And Dan Lanning is the last person I would want to go to Alabama, because I feel like I have a soft spot for Oregon right now. But if Dan Lanning goes to Alabama, I'm like, nah, fuck this guy. Yeah. So that's with the Georgia hat on. But I think Dan Lanning feels like the most logical, just from like, just like from a casual perspective, that he has some sort of Alabama roots. He's been in the SEC. I said Glenn Schumann maybe a year or so ago, but I just can't see, like, maybe if Georgia won 3 straight national championships or something, it was a little more high profile. But I can't see Alabama going in the guy that's never coached at all, even if he did graduate from Alabama and he's got some of that. Because I think there's something to the alma mater aspect to it, with Jim Harbaugh winning a national championship and Kirby winning a national championship at Georgia. I think a lot of people want to do stuff like that. D'Amico Ryans at Houston Texans, like a dark horse that maybe they'd throw a bunch of money. But I mean, this is a guy who's been an NFL assistant for years. So it's just a matter if he'd rather coach in the NFL or coach in college, which most people probably rather coach in the NFL these days. So that's kind of a dark horse. But, I think Lane Kiffin's a guy who makes a lot of sense. To me, Deion Sanders just doesn't make sense. Deion Sanders is just, it feels like his biggest attribute is like his like showmanship and everything. So he seems like a guy that goes to, like, I don't know if he ever goes to Miami because he's a Florida State guy and I just don't know if he can do that. But Miami is the kind of place, somewhere who needs to be like resurrected, but like does have a national championship ceiling type of thing. You know what I mean? And Deion Sanders, like, he can show up and make them relevant again and start to get legit 5 stars and stuff like that. Alabama's just not that situation. You almost want a guy that can just keep the thing on the tracks, right? Like, they're doing things perfectly in Alabama. Like, you don't need to come in and start changing things up. So that's what makes you think it's hopefully going to be a guy that's been under Saban at some point you would think they would want to go. And I think that's what makes guys like Kiffin and Dan Lanning the most attractive. Even though Lane Kiffin, it's such a brief time under Saban, he doesn't even feel like a Saban guy. Like Lanning feels like he's got the Saban mentality more.
And he
than
was there less.
Lane Kiffin does.
He's only there a year.
But since he was under Kiffin and then under Kirby or under Saban and then under Kirby, he just feels like he has that mentality more than.
Was he under Norvell too at Memphis?
Oh, that's probably right, because he was at Memphis before Georgia. So yeah, I just Kiffin, it seems like a whole nother direction. I don't hate Kalen DeBoer. You throwing that out there, but that seems like a whole nother direction. I don't know if I can see them. I mean, he's obviously just in the national championship game, but that feels like doing something very different than what you're doing. And unlike this situation, like going from a Mark Richt to a Kirby Smart, we see programs tend to want to, they had an offensive guy before, let's go with a defensive guy, change things up because things aren't going well. But with Alabama, it seems like you try to get as much continuity as possible. And maybe Steve Sarkisian, that's another guy that's had some Saban on his resume, for lack of a better term. So, maybe he's an option. But like I said, at Texas, you just made the 14 playoff. There's really nothing as great as Nick Saban has made Alabama. There's nothing inherently better than Alabama than Texas at the end of the day. Like, that was just Nick Saban is the greatest coach in the history of the sport. But at Texas, if you got things going right, you got to think your ceiling is as high as anyone in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I also judge based on like how the like who would be the most nervous. I'm like, oh, Kiffin with it. I think part of it is like, don't overthink the recruiting connections and don't overthink the area, because like that's what Freeze has just completely pounced on with his staff, with how he's recruited. Like, there's just so much talent in this area that you got to have guys with connections, and you've got to have just this relentless recruiting, just know-how. Like, Kirby is relentless. His staff is relentless. He's hiring. Like, when Fran Brown leaves, guess what? He goes and hires a great recruiter at USC to replace him. Like, he understands that the recruiting churn, you just can never have enough high-quality recruiting assistants. Kalen DeBoer can coach football. Like, Kalen DeBoer is a great coach. Kalen DeBoer will not recruit at this level. They will not be 90% full of blue chippers if Kalen DeBoer winds up at Washington. There's just going to be a disconnect. He's going to bring a lot of his own guys. He's not going to just surround it with nothing but Alabama guys. And that's, again, like, I like Kalen DeBoer. I think he's an elite college football coach. I think it's a bad fit. And if it's something like that happens, I don't know. Lanning, I think will be fine. Lanning would be kind of scary at Alabama because I don't think it would be a dynasty type deal. But I think they are going to keep that thing humming. He'll bring some Oregon guys who are just super talented and get a lot of those Alabama guys to stay, who might be thinking like the Caleb Downs of the world. They're going to stay for a Dan Lanning. Like, if you bring in Dan Lanning, I think you're going to be able to keep a lot of this group together, which is a little bit scary. You get DeBoer, you get one of these other outside the box guys, you run the risk of losing a lot. So I'm very curious how that goes with the nature of the portal and the 30-day window these kids have. And then, I think the two dark horses that, like, if I was a strong betting man, just to like throw $25 on both of them, because I think they have a real shot, it would just be like catch some fans by surprise. But when you really think about it, you're like, that's not really a surprise at all. Mike Norvell, I think ACC, you just had the best season you might ever be able to have at Florida State. Cash in that undefeated spot. The ACC is getting left behind more and more. You look at just how this thing is humming with this conference. You're going to continue to fall behind at Florida State in the money category, not being in the SEC and Big Ten right now. You might not be able to get out of the grant of rights for another decade. We'll see how that goes. It's Alabama. You jump at it, you take it, and Bama, it's a safe hire. We know he can coach, and Bama will be good. Like, they'll keep it humming, and I think that's a pretty safe one. And I think that's like, man, that's just solid. Mike Norvell is just going to be really good at Bama. The other one that I think might turn more SEC heads, and I don't know if you share this, Matt Green, but I think it'd actually be pretty defensible. It's Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, because you don't know what Notre Dame's future is like as an independent and where they wind up and stuff like that. That Brian Kelly got tired of, hey, there's only so much I can do at Notre Dame before I just reach the point where I just have to acknowledge that I can't win a title at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, it's not like he's a Notre Dame lifer. He played football at Ohio State. He understands the recruiting aspect of it. He's recruiting really well at Notre Dame. Bama, like, it's not like Saban, obviously Michigan State and other stuff. It's not like he was just he's West Virginia. Like, he was all over the place. It's not like these deep Southern ties. Marcus Freeman, I think, would recruit at a pretty strong top 3, top 2 level consistently. Not as experienced as a lot of the other names coming in, but, I mean, almost 10 wins, both in his first 2 seasons. Been a great DC years prior. I think he would be a strong recruiter. I think he would. I mean, he just pulled LSU's offensive coordinator, who just put together a season for Jaden Daniels where he won the Heisman. He'd probably bring him in. So I think the offense would be just moving in the right direction. I think he'd be able to keep a lot of those guys. It might raise some eyebrows from people in the South and everything else, and Bama fans are like, really? We're going to get the Notre Dame guy? I could see Marcus Freeman working and actually being really good. He's a sneaky, scary one to me because I think if you give him Alabama's resources and just kind of his rise, and when you listen to his interviews and stuff like that, you're like, he might be a younger Dan Lanning. Like, there's some Dan Lanning parallels with him and what he's doing at Notre Dame that I don't know. I think that's another one I would throw some money on.
I'm still not sold on how good of a coach Marcus Freeman is personally, but I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that could succeed at Alabama because I think Alabama's got a lot going for it. So yeah, I mean, that wouldn't shock me. I think when you're comparing the two, it seems like in the small sample size, like Lanning feels a lot more proven to this point than Marcus Freeman, and maybe Oregon. And especially you compare those two guys too, like they both didn't exactly inherit rebuilds. So they both inherited really good programs. And I would argue that Marcus Freeman inherited a better program and has done worse in his 2 years there. So I think if I was Alabama, the number one guy on my list would be Dan Lanning.
Okay, we'll end on this because the hire might happen over the next 24 hours. We can see how we're feeling and all this. Your final prediction.
You didn't even throw out Dabo Swinney.
I don't think they're protesting the students. You see that at the memorial or the oatmeal cream pie memorial for Nick Saban and his statue, where they put a bunch, which I love, that they just put a bunch of oatmeal cream pies and a lot of Coach Saban's favorites over there. So shout out to the students.
He didn't die.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, the Bama's dynasty did, but.
It was already dead. Some knew it was already dead, but we can keep going.
Well, they were basically saying like not anybody but Dabo was the nobody at Alabama wants Dabo, and I don't think Dabo.
That's tough. That's your alma mater, man.
People just he's a divisive figure, and it works at Clemson. But my theory on Dabo has always been like I don't think he jumps. I think he just retires. Like once he leaves Clemson, it's over. He's not dealing with the portal. He's not starting over somewhere else. That man is getting out. My guess is because he definitely isn't doing an NFL locker room and all that. Like that man is not making the jump to the NFL. So I think it's Clemson, and then he rides off into the
players
sunset.
Getting paid.
Yeah, like I don't see that going well. So your final prediction though, Matt Green, who do you think it is?
I feel like if I gotta predict, I guess I'm gonna go with Lanning. I think that's the buyout. You know, money. You find the money. If it's money's no object at Alabama. So I don't know. I think that's the one that makes the most sense to me. Is Alabama definitely a better job than Oregon in your opinion?
Is Alabama a better job than Oregon
right now today?
Yeah.
Like if you're Dan Lanning, if you haven't been at Oregon, if you're just anywhere and you can just choose to go to Alabama or Oregon, then you probably choose Alabama. But if is it worth starting over and following a guy like Nick Saban to jump to Alabama? That's the question. It's a question he has to answer.
I'm gonna say I also love that Pat Schumer has the 6th best odds to get this job.
I mean, Billy Napier was on the betting odds. I don't know.
He's 14-1. Pat Schumer has better odds than Norvell, Ryan Day, Marcus Freeman, James Franklin. That's preposterous. Like that is, that is what every SEC fan needs to be rooting for. Pat Schumer would be just an unbelievable Shula price hire. Like he's an OC right now. He just got that. Oh my goodness, that would be incredible. But it's not going to happen. I'm going to say it's Kalen DeBoer is my final answer.
Ooh. I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I wish if Alabama had more continuity on the defensive side of the ball, like someone who'd kind of been there a while, like a Bud Foster type or something, it would be that would be a direction I would like to go in, like someone who's just new age offense, and it's like just leave that defense alone and keep doing what you're doing. But like Kevin Steele, I don't know how long does he last anywhere. Like, is he even going to be around for the next guy?
He already retired. Really Kevin Steele retired a couple days ago.
Oh, there you go. I missed that. So so there you go. So you're going to be finding a new DC too. So shout out to if Kalen DeBoer gets the job, Ryan Grubb, like shout out to that dude for believing in himself, turning down the Alabama OC job, and then having this insane season with Washington. I imagine if Kalen DeBoer gets the job, Ryan Grubb is going to be the OC at Alabama, unless he finds a head coaching job of his own.
Speaking of Washington, let's pivot here on this. It's going to be a shorter show with the Saban stuff and college football. Now, the regular season coming to and postseason coming to a close. Matt Green, Michigan blows out Washington, as you texted me, like, oh, there's a whole second half. And I'm like, dude, I'm on fire with my picks. I'm on fire with.
I mean, that was a close game.
Right now. Calling Nick Saban out, saying Saban was going to retire is my bold prediction before the year. Getting the college football playoff exactly right. Getting the national title pick exactly right. Look, man, I'm tired of winning. When you're at everything school HQ, it rubs off on you sometimes, man.
Can I stop real quick? Yeah. I had one last Saban note here. The worst season of Nick Saban's career was 10-3 at Alabama. Other schools are building coffee table books for stuff like that. Okay, that's all I got to say.
Yeah. Those days are over, man.
It was a forced joke. I was just trying to throw a dig at Tennessee there. We can talk about the championship game now.
Okay, I didn't think that was necessary. But Matt Green, can Georgia fans stop? Because the Georgia fans who came out immediately after Michigan stomped Washington in the national title game, Georgia fans, man, I need you to be the Georgia fan police here, Matt Green, because they come out number 2 S&P plus. So, and I think everyone, rational college football fan, would say the best 2 teams this year were Georgia and Michigan. I think most rational fans would say that. That being said, the instant reaction and seeing a lot of, even Georgia people that I respect being like, oh, this Georgia team would have blasted Michigan is absurd. Because I understand you saw the Orange Bowl and you remember what happened there 2 years ago, completely different circumstance. You were not blasting this Michigan defense. No one was blasting this Michigan defense. It's a close game. It would have been fun to see. But the instant reaction of like, oh, they would have been national champions if you had just put them in because we were clearly better than the rest of these playoff teams. I'm like, what else did Michigan have to do? They beat Alabama, a team you lost to, a month prior that put you in the predicament that you're currently in. They played a close game against Alabama and won on a neutral site. You did not. You want to? Like, I understand. But to immediately disregard that and disregard all of what Michigan just did, an undefeated season, the number 1 scoring defense in the sport, running all over Washington, making Michael Penix's life a living hell in this national title game. The only team to slow down Michael Penix all year long, really. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way, Matt Green. No, Georgia fans have to calm down.
I understand what you're saying, but 2 things can be true. So I think you could watch that college football playoff, all 3 games played out of it, and sit there as a Georgia fan like, man, Georgia was better than all 4 of these teams. Like, Georgia could have beaten all 4 of these teams. And I think Georgia was better than all 4 of those teams. I think if on a neutral
you can't say they're better than Michigan. Michigan beat the team that you lost to.
I personally think they were better than Michigan. But that's what makes this season frustrating because you didn't take care of business and you didn't earn being in the college football playoff. So I feel like it's like a closed door conversation. It's talking with your buddy that's a fellow fan that's like, man, we're better than all of these teams. But you don't go to Twitter like Georgia got hosed. They're a top 4 team. It's like, in that regard, like, I hate that the whole best 4 teams versus most deserving. I hate that Georgia's the only team that it ever applies to because it happened back in 2018 and now in 2022 where I think most people thought Georgia was a top 4 team. everyone pretty much thought they were a top 4 team. But I think we all know as a college football public, they were not a top 4 deserving team. And that's really, they can say they don't pick it that way, but that is how they pick it. And honestly, it's how they should pick it. So Georgia didn't deserve to be in the college football playoff because they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship. So that's full stop, right? That's all that needs to be said. But you can still have the opinion that, damn, I feel like this Georgia team could have beaten all these teams. And I think that's why Michigan had a Georgia hour or whatever of their practice, Georgia session of their practice all off season, because that was the team that they knew stood in between them and a championship. And I think we were all sitting here as college football fans kind of feeling a little robbed that Georgia didn't take care of business and we didn't get what we felt like the number 1 and 2 teams in the country were. And not just to disrespect Washington, like they didn't earn what they got, but that should have been the Rose Bowl. It would have been a great 2-3 matchup, but I really would have loved to see this Michigan team go up against Georgia.
And that's a more rational way of framing it. But the Georgia fans who are tweeting at, like, under the national champion just celebrations, like, would have blasted both of these teams. And you're like, all right, man. And then the people after, the day after, of like, that just proved that Georgia was the best team. It's like, that's what that proved. That's what you watch that game and you're just going to put that out there and you're just like, yeah, Michigan asterisk title. Like, we would have beat, but I'm like, that's some Alabama
I recall
stuff.
Making fun of Alabama fans for the exact thing last year. So we got to keep in mind, Twitter's not a real place and there's a lot of dumb people. Everyone's opinion isn't equal.
But even on radio, I was listening. I mean, I still check. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm people that I like and podcast. I'm like, are we doing this? Are we really? Georgia doesn't need this. Like, Georgia, all they do is beat Bama, and all this is solved. Michigan took care of their job. Michigan won all of their games.
I think this was the worst Alabama team probably since 2010, that 10-3 team we were talking about. And it was one of the more flawed teams. And like I said, Kirby Smart 1-5 versus Nick Saban. It was the first time I was legitimately surprised. Like, I was not expecting it. I thought Georgia was the better team all year, but they didn't get it done. They didn't make the playoff. It is what it is. Michigan and Washington both went undefeated, and they deserved where they were. Are we digging into this game? Or I got a couple
because it's been a couple days. So now that we've had Duff Settle and Saban and everything else, we're not going to do a deep dive. But what do you got for me?
So I was just looking at Michigan. This is like a great story. Like, this is like some, I don't know, like movie type stuff, but it's like, there's a lot of poetic justice here. So January 8th, 2021, that was the day that Jim Harbaugh restructured his contract, because to that point, he was 49-22 at Michigan, winning 69% of his games for 6 years. Since that, 3 years to the date, he won a national championship on January 8th. The last 3 years, he's 40-3, and Michigan has just been a powerhouse. So it's like, it's just a perfect story in terms of like the team that went undefeated, right? And then they got blasted when they got to the playoff. And then they went undefeated again, and they had they got upset, but it was a track, like a classic game. And then they got back, went undefeated again, and then they finally had the seniors come back. Like Blake Corum, the Heisman finalist a year ago, gets hurt at the end of the season, has a bad taste in his mouth, comes back for his senior year. Just this loaded roster, had a bunch of people come back, and they just had everything, and they won a national championship. But then you have this cheating scandal, and it's like you can't even feel good. It's like there's so much like poetic justice happening, and they're like, yeah, but they also cheated. I don't know how much we care about it, but it's nonetheless, it's a great just like story of just a team that was kept knocking on the door, and they eventually broke through. And there's something, like I said, that's just special about a guy winning at his alma mater, like Kirby has the past couple of years.
And it's also like it inspired them, and you kind of wonder, like, do they make this run if it's not Michigan against the world? Because this pissed them all off, and it brought the coaching staff further together. It brought the players further together. It gave them that same thing, like that rat poison. I mean, Georgia had it, where it's like they thought we were going to go 7-5, and it's like we all laugh from the outside. It's like no one thought you were doing 7-5, and it worked internally, which is all that matters. It's motivating the guys in that locker room. That's all you have to worry about. And those Michigan players were motivated to win every game and prove week in, week out that those scandals did not mean anything on the field, and that they were still the best team in the country with or without whatever you thought that was going on there. Like it's a great run. Harbaugh, I think he's a quirky dude, but the guy's just a winner, man. He wins everywhere. Like Harbaugh wins everywhere. And to revitalize San Diego years and years ago, to revitalize Stanford, to get to the Super Bowl with San Francisco, to
turn Stanford into like a perennial like New Year's Six team.
Yeah, and again, we see now how hard that was. That's like one of those where he's gone, and David Shaw like was okay for a little bit, and then it got really bad, and now they're one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 now, the ACC, which is weird.
Almost won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, almost won a Super Bowl. And then he comes here, and he, like you said, restructures the contract. It gets bad. 2020, they were awful. What were they, 2-4? Where it was like, oh, this is over. And he's like, nah.
Which we talked about at the time was hilarious. It was just like, Jim, you haven't been coach. You've been underperforming. And he's like, I have been underperforming. How about you pay me a little bit less? He's okay. We can agree on that. And I've never seen anything like it in a sports contract. They didn't fire him. They just paid him a little less, and he earned it. And I think he's going to get paid a little bit more now, or jump to the NFL. We'll see.
Who knows what he does, but he has all the leverage in the world. He wins wherever he goes, NFL, college. He makes it look easy. I think it's a great story. I think Harbaugh is a great story.
Other than the cheating.
I mean, I'm not doing it. And again, I will say there's a reason that there was a lot of big time programs and elite coaches that did not go after Jim Harbaugh publicly. All that being said, Michigan was the best team at the beginning of the year. They were the best team at the end. The stats bared that out. They were in the blue chip ratio. The trenches were awesome. They got to Michael Penix. They dominated on the offensive and defensive line. Edwards had those two big runs early. Corum obviously ran the ball really well. Michigan, I think they ran for over 300 in this game total. There's 0 times Michigan was going to lose a football game when they run for 300 plus. Like that just means you're having a tough day.
You're framing this like this was a blowout, though.
Oh, it was never close. Like after the first quarter, it was over.
Like, this game was a touchdown game for like 2 quarters. No, it never felt like it. Do
you see, like, they had like a 97... What was the win probability after those first 2 touchdowns? It was something crazy because I was keeping up with that on ESPN.
I know defense obviously impacts the way an offense plays, but Washington played outside of, I think it was the Arizona State game. This was the worst game, the worst performance from this Washington offense I've seen almost all year. Like, Penix was definitely under pressure. Like, every single throw was off his back foot. Like, it was insane the pressure he was under, but there were just so many missed opportunities. Like the one in the second quarter, the 4th down where he had a Dunze wide open for what would have been like a 40-yard touchdown, and they missed that one. Obviously the holding on the big on the one big play they did have early in the 4th quarter, like when that's still a touchdown game early in the 4th. I mean, that's the drive after the running back just had an easy drop on a 3rd down and short. So it's like they just, as poor as Penix played, like he missed so many throws. And obviously you have to give Michigan a bunch of credit for that because he was under so much pressure. And I'm sure even when he wasn't, he was still feeling it just because he was under pressure most of the time. But just with the way that Washington's, and it's not like Texas's defense was just that terrible, and that's the only reason Washington played well. Like they've been doing this all season. These receivers have been ballers all season, and you just saw so many uncharacteristic drops. So I hated that we didn't get really the best version of Washington. Like obviously Michigan contributed to that, but I mean, this Washington defense doesn't really get enough credit. Like this thing was like you said, Michigan ran for 303 yards on 38 carries. On the first 3 drives of the game, they had 10 carries for 184 yards. So, I mean, from the second quarter on, like final 3 quarters of the game, they're holding Michigan to 4 yards a carry. And, that's not amazing, but it's not 18 yards a carry like it was in the first quarter. So they got, what was it, like 5-6 straight drives where Michigan didn't score. Like Washington's defense did enough to win this game. And I feel like Michael Penix and these receivers just missed a few opportunities. And I think this game really got away from it. And then after that, I think it was the 4th down stop, or I can't remember, in the 4th quarter. And then obviously the interception to start the second half was big, but once Michigan just kind of put their foot on their throat, they just kind of dominated the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, this is another one, Matt Green, where look, people were getting a little worried about the blue chip ratio. Was Penix going to break the mode of first team to win a national title, not being in that top 15 in the blue chip ratio? And Michael Penix was the kind of quarterback to maybe do that. And Michael Penix was awesome, but they did not. And Bud Elliott has this tweet. I don't know if you saw this a couple days ago.
Non-blue chip
huh?
Bud Elliott was sweating.
I mean, he
lives his life by the blue chip ratio.
Hey, we love Bud Elliott on this program. Non-blue chip ratio teams who made the championship game playoff era: 0-4, losing by an average of 27 points, -5, -21, -22, and -58 in those 4 losses. That's just what happened again.
You're saying 0-4. You're saying Washington's not a blue chip ratio team, right?
Correct. Yeah. So all 4
won.
teams have been in the national. No.
In the national
title. Yeah.
Who are those teams?
I don't know, but TCU is
Oregon,
in there.
Maybe that first year.
Who?
Maybe Oregon, the first
Probably,
year of the playoff.
Yeah, that feels right. But yeah, all 4 teams got smoked and did not work in the national title game. It's just still the trenches and that depth.
I think getting
you hate
smoked,
this. You hate the blue chip ratio.
Smoked, I know I do. I think it's really overrated, the composite rankings and stuff like that. Obviously, you know who the teams have the best talent and they're the best. That's essentially what that thing is telling you. But I just disagree that they got smoked. Like, they were about to get smoked in the first quarter, and then this game was going back and forth, and they were down. Like, what is the box score? Like, they were down 20 to 13 at halftime, right? And it was.
I mean, sure, they couldn't run the ball. Michigan ran for over 300 yards. There was never a point after Michigan showed that they could run whenever they wanted on Washington. It was over.
I'm just saying, Washington scored to make it 17-10. Before the half, and this was a touchdown game going into the fourth quarter. Like, they didn't get smoked. Michigan pulled away at the end, but I don't know. I think that's. I guess maybe I'm just used to TCU, Georgia. That's the level I'm at. They didn't get beat by 58 points, but I felt like Washington. This was a back and forth game for the majority of it until Michigan pulled away at the end.
That's fine.
I don't know. I got to give them credit. Like, I feel like they're getting disrespected.
It's not disrespected. I love Washington. They did a great job. I picked Michigan. Michigan, they established the run. They showed that they were going to be able to run on you. And, I mean, Michigan, though, what kind of was so disrespectful, too, when you think about it, guess how many Michigan, they were 0 for 1 on 4th down. How many 3rd downs they converted in this game?
Oh, man, like 3?
1. And they still had 443 total yards.
But they
converted
not like
1.
They're not doing that on air. Washington forced.
What I'm saying is, like, that's
Michigan
just
to 1 for 10 on 3rd down. Like, Washington was playing well defensively.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. They got gashed.
I mean, outside of those first 3 quarters,
they ran 8 yards per rush.
They had 180 yards in the first quarter. I'm just saying the last 3 quarters of the game, Michigan's offense didn't do like hardly anything. I mean, I guess from the start of the second quarter to halfway through the fourth quarter, I should say, they basically put the shackles on Michigan. And then at the start of the start and the end, Michigan dominated, and that was enough to dominate on the scoreline.
Either way, Michigan, the champions here. The SEC streak is over for a little bit. We'll see what happens next year, Matt Green. But Michigan, they win the national title, and we'll see what happens to Harbaugh. Ryan Day continued to bulk up that staff, and Quinshon Judkins now at running back, Will Howard at quarterback. They're not messing around next year in the Big Ten, but very excited to see what Alabama does and more Tennessee stuff that we'll talk about in the coming weeks. And then we do our offseason, man. A lot of fun offseason stuff that we'll get into, but that's it.
So do you prefer the storyline of like whoever wins is winning their first championship in forever, or do you prefer like the more David and Goliath, the perennial powerhouse facing the team that's trying to break through? You know, like the Clemson facing Alabama. They haven't won a championship in 30 something years, facing the gold standard.
Oh, that
versus versus Washington, Michigan. Whoever wins, it's going to be somebody's. Like I've heard people talk about this could be the year we get like the Browns and the Lions in the Super Bowl. And it's like, no, I don't want Browns and Lions. Like I want to watch the Lions play whoever, the Chiefs or something. Yeah, it's like that. That's a better storyline. But
I agree with that.
But it was a good game. As a neutral fan, I saw people hating on the game, like there was bad football being played at times. Like I don't know. I feel like people get so sensitive when it's not their team playing in the game. But I thought it was a great game. I got some stats for you on the 10 years of the 4-team playoff here. That was the 6th different champion we had in the 4-team playoff era. So as much as people like to say it was the same teams winning every year, 6 different teams in 10 years is pretty solid. 4 different times we had number 1 versus number 2 in 10 years. So I think that's 6 times that the BCS gets it wrong for all those pro BCS people out there. And then 3 of those times in 10 years, the 3 or the 4 seed won the national championship. So I think that proved that the 4-team playoff was a success. Personally, I think it needed some little room for error outside of number 1 and number 2. But I got a trivia question for you, sir. 15 different programs. This is a loaded question, but I think you can get it. 15 different programs made the college football playoffs, sir. Can you name them all?
I'm not doing. What are you doing?
Name
it's
them all
almost
right
1
now.
a.m. I am not. No,
you're
out of your
right
mind.
Now.
What? You're not dropping.
It's not that hard.
You're not doing
Name
this.
them.
No. What is happening?
Off
you don't
the top
drop.
of your head. The listeners are losing respect for you right now. You gotta do it off the top of your head. They understand.
I won them so much money this year. I predicted just about everything right. I don't even remember a bad prediction this college football season, Matt Green. Like what?
Come on. Hit me. I'm not gonna let you get out of this. You got this. You can get a bunch of them right off the top of your head.
Hold on. How many are we talking here?
15.
15 what?
15 different college football teams.
I can't believe you're doing this to me.
College football playoff.
LSU.
Boom. There it is.
Oregon.
There it is.
USC.
Oh, incorrect.
Wait, did USC never make it?
USC never made the playoff.
That's right. Georgia.
That was my final note.
Georgia, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Washington, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Florida State.
I'm nodding along.
How many am I at?
That is 1, 2, that's 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10.
Okay, Clemson, Alabama. 12.
Okay, that's 12.
Florida.
Oh,
no, they didn't do it. Florida
no.
did. No. Oh, Auburn.
No.
It's Auburn. Hold on. TCU, obviously. Washington.
TCU.
I said Washington. I'm trying to think.
You already said Washington. Yeah. You got 2 more.
2 more?
3 incorrect guesses along the way. But you do it pretty
folks,
good.
It's 1 a.m. on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, do it pretty good.
Who am I missing here? Let me think.
You give up here?
No. Hold on. You're putting me through this. Just this nonsense at this hour. Hold on. I'm still thinking.
Your hint is that these 2 teams share a common head coach. Oh, how about that hint?
Share a common head coach. This is gonna piss me off more when you want to figure this out. Share what conference is one of them?
I don't know. I feel like it'll give it away.
Who am I forgetting right now?
Do you give up?
No, I'm still thinking.
They share a head coach like in our like recent history, like not old stuff or anything.
They share.
A lot of schools share head coach with one of these. One of
Michigan State.
Hey, there it is.
Michigan State.
Where did he come from?
Yeah. You're talking about Nick Saban.
No.
Wow. I thought you were doing the LSU.
The 2 that were
Alabama
left.
too.
That's true. He's with all of those. Michigan State. Where?
D'Antonio?
There it is.
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Oof. Where did Mark D'Antonio come from? God.
Oh man, the disrespect.
Where did-
Making
oh,
history.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Oh
There
my
you
God. I
go.
forgot Cincinnati. That one. Okay. Cincinnati.
So 15 and 18 guesses.
Hmm.
Not bad right there, sir. I would say the best programs.
That was dirty, man. Doing this,
The best
not even on the show
programs-
sheet, just doing that an hour into this pod and just be like, name the 15 off the
It
dome.
was
And
good-
you
it
didn't
was
have to
good
do
stuff.
it. You
A
just
lot
threw
of
it
those
at
were
me.
easy answers. You like cruised your way to like 9 or 10. So it wasn't that tough.
Great.
I would say the
thanks.
best programs that did not make the playoff in the 4-team era, like you said, those three incorrect guesses: USC, Florida, and Auburn, probably up there. I would say Penn State, Tennessee, Nebraska, Miami, Texas A&M. Those are the ones. Those are the kind of programs. Maybe throwing an Ole Miss now. Those are the kind of programs that are going to benefit a lot from this 12-team format. That they're right on the outside looking in. That maybe they can make some noise in a 12-team playoff.
There you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure, my friend. And I will talk to you next week.
Yes.